You're listening to the story. She escaped a forced marriage at 13 and one cowboy stood in their way. It's in a land where justice bowed to money, and a child could be traded like cattle to settle a debt. One widowed cowboy, haunted by loss, stood between a terrified girl and the men who claimed to own her. This isn't just a tale of rescue. It's a fight for redemption, a battle against corruption. Okay? And a journey that proves even the most broken souls can still choose to do what's right. The early Texas sun was relentless, baking the land in a haze of heat as Jack Morrison tracked a wounded Mustang across the plains. It had been hours since he left Camp Solitude, had become his closest companion in the years since he'd buried his wife and lost his daughter to fever. His life had shrunk to a few dusty trails in the silence between hoofbeats. Then he heard it. A scream, sharp and high, sliced through the quiet air like a blade. Not the scream of a woman, no. It was younger, more desperate. Jack froze. In all his years out here, never heard a sound that made his blood run cold like that. Through the heat shimmer, a figure emerged. A girl, barely more than a child, running barefoot across the rocky terrain. Her dress white, torn, bloodied, at the hem whipped around her thin frame as she stumbled over the stones. Behind her, 4 riders thundered across the flatland, their silhouettes growing larger by the second. Jack's hand drifted to his revolver, instinct overriding thought. He'd seen plenty of trouble in his time, but something about this felt different, darker. The girl's eyes found him. Wide with terror, her face streaked with dirt and tears. She veered toward him like he was her last hope. She reached his horse, clinging to the stirrup with trembling hands. "Please," she gasped, her voice barely a whisper. "Don't let them take me. I can't go back. I won't." Jack looked down at her and saw bruises on her arms, fresh scrapes on her legs, and a kind of fear that didn't come from being lost or alone. It came from being hunted. The men chasing her slowed as they saw Jack. One of them, heavy-set with gold teeth flashing in the sunlight, called out, "That girl's stolen property. Stranger, hand her over and ride on. This ain't your concern." Jack's grip tightened on his reins. She couldn't have been older than 13. Condom men chased a child like she was prey. "She don't look stolen to me," Jack said, his voice low but steady. The lead man's grin disappeared. "You've got no idea what kind of trouble you're asking for, cowboy. That girl's got a husband waiting for her, legal and proper." "I ain't nobody's wife," the girl cried, clutching tighter to Jack's leg. "They sold me to a man older than my grandfather. I'm not going back." The old rage, the kind Jack thought had died with his daughter Emily, stirred in his chest. He looked into the girl's eyes, and for a moment, just a flicker, he saw Emily's face, saw the little girl who'd once believed he could fix anything. The riders fanned out, forming a half circle around Jack and the girl. Guns glinted in the sun. 4 men, 6 revolvers, cold eyes. This wasn't just a chase, it was a capture. "Last chance," the fat man growled. "Walk away, or we bury you right here." Then came a rumble, more hoofbeats, heavier, faster from the east. Dust clouds rose on the horizon. Jack counted at least 8 more riders. This wasn't a search party. It was an ambush. The girl, her name barely audible between sobs, clung tighter to Jack. "Sarah," she said. "My name's Sarah. I didn't mean for this. I didn't know they were setting a trap." Jack's eyes scanned the terrain. The canyon behind them offered no escape. To the west were the first 4 riders. The new group would seal off the east. That left one path south, deeper into the Badlands. "Sarah," Jack said quietly, never taking his eyes off the riders. "You know how to ride. My daddy taught me before he died. Uncle Pete, he's the one who sold me." Jack filed the name away. His family that traded their blood for land and gold. He looked back to the incoming riders. At their front road, a man in a black suit, silver hair slicked under an expensive hat. He didn't need to be close for Jack to feel his presence cold, commanding, dangerous. The gold-toothed man called out to him. "Mr. Calloway, got her cornered, just like you said." Jack had heard that name before, in whispers from Amarillo to El Paso. Calloway, land baron, judge buyer, a man who built his empire on fear and silence. The silver-haired man approached. Eyes locked on Sarah like she was a prize steer. "Miss Sarah," he said, with a smile too polished to be kind, "you've led us quite the chase. But playtime is over. You have a wedding to attend." "I won't marry you," Sarah shouted, voice breaking. "I'm 13. Calloway's smile didn't falter. "Enough to bear children," he said coldly, "and young enough to be trained properly." Jack felt something inside him break. This wasn't just about marriage, it was about ownership, control. Evil dressed in fine words and finer clothes. "She stays with me," Jack said. Calloway's eyes narrowed. "You misunderstand your position, Mr. Morrison. I know who you are. Lost your ranch near Sweetwater. Wife died of cholera. Daughter to typhus. Tragic." He leaned forward slightly. "You have nothing left to lose. But I assure you, what little you have left, I will take." Jack's fingers tightened on the reins until his knuckles went white. He'd already lost everything that mattered. That made him more dangerous than Calloway could ever understand. Then Calloway nodded to his men. 12 rifles cocked in unison, and behind him, Sarah whispered something that froze Jack's blood. "My daddy didn't die of fever," she said. "Calloway had him killed. He found something worth more than all the cattle in Texas." Jack turned his head slowly toward her. "Gold," she whispered. "He found a gold vein. He made a map before he died. Told me to memorize it. Calloway didn't just want a child bride. He wanted the key to a fortune buried beneath dust and bones. And he was willing to kill anyone who stood in his way." Jack looked at the guns pointed at him, then at the child clutching his leg. The odds were bad. The way out was worse. But the choice was easy. Jack Morrison didn't wait for permission. The moment Sarah whispered that her father had been murdered for discovering a gold vein, Jack made his move. He swung her onto the saddle behind him with one swift motion. "Hold tight," he said, spurring the horse toward the narrowest opening between the advancing riders. Shouts erupted. Gunfire cracked behind them. Bullets hissed past Jack's ears. One tore through his hat. Another grazed his shoulder. Sarah clung to him like a drowning child, her small hands locked around his waist. The canyon was a death trap, narrow, rocky, with sharp turns, but it was their only chance. As they galloped into its twisting jaws, Jack remembered stories from years past. Old mining tunnels riddled the area, dug by desperate men looking for copper, silver, and sometimes more. Dangerous, mostly collapsed, but maybe, just maybe, still passable. Behind them, the thunder of hooves echoed in the tight rock corridors. The men weren't giving up, not when the girl was worth more than gold. Up there, Sarah pointed through the dust to a narrow ledge halfway up the canyon wall. "That trail leads to the old copper mine. My daddy showed it to me once." Jack didn't hesitate. He guided the horse up the incline, the animal struggling on the loose rock. More shots rang out. A sharp cry escaped Sarah's lips as a piece of rock tore through her already bleeding foot. She buried her face in Jack's back, but didn't let go. They reached the mine entrance just as a new volley of gunfire ricocheted off the canyon walls. Jack swung off the saddle and helped Sarah down, half carrying her through the blackened maw of the old mine. It smelled of rot, dust, and something else, something ancient and still, inside. The darkness swallowed them. Jack lit a match and used it to ignite a stub of an old miner's torch, still hanging on the wall. Its flame flickered weakly, casting jagged shadows across the uneven tunnel. Behind them, voices echoed, distorted by the winding stone corridors. They didn't have much time. "Sarah, how far in does this tunnel go?" he asked. "I don't know," she admitted, wincing as she limped forward. "Daddy said some of the tunnels go for miles, but some are dead ends. Dangerous ones." "Okay." That was comforting. As they pressed deeper into the mine, the air grew colder and thicker. The tunnel split into 3 paths. Jack chose the center one, hoping his gut still worked when logic failed. After a few minutes, the narrow shaft widened into an open cavern. In its center was a small fire already burning. Someone was waiting. A figure stepped forward, his face illuminated by the glow. It was an older man, thin, weathered, with a bandana around his neck and a rifle slung over his shoulder. Jack recognized him instantly. "Miguel Santos," he said. "Senar Morrison." Santos replied with a respectful nod. "You're far from Sweetwater. So are you. I heard rumors. A man with your name helped a girl escape from Calloway's men. I hoped they were true." Jack glanced at Sarah, who clung to his side, her eyes wide. "How much do you know?" Santos nodded grimly. "Enough to know she's not the only one. Calloway's been buying girls from desperate families across the territory. Some he keeps, others vanish." Sarah shivered beside him. "But there's more," Santos continued. "Your girl's father. He wasn't just a prospector." Jack frowned. "He found a gold vein." "That's why Calloway wants her." "But he was also a federal marshal, undercover. He was building a case against Calloway's whole operation. Before they killed him, he gave the girl more than a gold map. He gave her evidence." Jack stared at Sarah, realization dawning. "What'd you carry?" Santos said gently. "Turning to her could expose everything, if we can get you to the right people." "But they're right behind us," Jack said. "We'll never make it out through the canyon." Santos nodded. "There's another way, deeper into the tunnels. But it's not safe. The old shafts are collapsing. Some haven't seen light in 20 years. Gas pockets, pitfalls, worse. Still sounds better than what's chasing us." Jack muttered. They started down a twisting tunnel, Sarah limping badly. The trail left a faint line of blood easy to follow if someone knew where to look. Jack stopped and crouched beside her. "Let me carry you." She tried to protest, but her strength was gone. He lifted her into his arms, shocked at how light she was, like a bird with broken wings. They moved fast. Santos, leading with the miner's memory, guiding him through the pitch-black labyrinth. But then, far behind them, came the sound they feared most. Voices. Calloway's men had found the mine. Sarah buried her face in Jack's shoulder. "He always finds us," she whispered. "We'll stay ahead," Jack promised. "No," she said quietly, her voice trembling. "There's something else I haven't told you." Jack slowed. "What is it?" Sarah hesitated, then pulled a small object from inside her torn dress, a pearl-handled derringer. Tiny but deadly. "My daddy gave it to me before they came. Told me if I ever needed to protect what he gave me, to use it." Jack stared at the weapon. A child's pistol in a child's hand, and a child forced to grow up too fast. They pressed on, deeper into the mine. The tunnel curved and narrowed, the walls bearing strange marking symbols carved by hands older than anyone alive. "What is this place?" Jack asked, as they emerged into a large chamber with a ceiling high above. Shafts of light filtered in from cracks, casting dancing patterns across the stone. Santos knelt beside the wall. "Apache. This was sacred ground before miners blasted it apart." Sarah winced as Jack lowered her beside a small pool of clear water. Her ankle was swollen, turning purple beneath the grime. She bit her lip to keep from crying out. Jack turned to Santos. "How far is Calloway's ranch?" 20 miles north. He keeps the girls there before they're broken. 5, maybe 6, are still alive." Sarah's eyes met Jack's. "Then We can't just run, she said, her voice low but fierce. We have to stop him. Jack hesitated. She reached out, her fingers brushing the revolver on his belt. Teach me, she whispered. Teach me to shoot. Jack stared at the girl beside him, dust-covered, bloodied, with a swollen ankle and bruises up her arms. Now she was asking him to teach her how to kill. The gun in her small hands looked absurdly delicate, more like a toy than a weapon, but her eyes held no trace of innocence. They were the eyes of someone who had already seen too much. I can't let him keep doing this, Sarah whispered. Not to me, not to the other girls. Jack knelt beside her at the edge of the cave pool, his voice gentle but firm. You want revenge? Okay. I want justice, she said quietly. He looked to Santos, who stood a few paces away, silently watching. The old miner had his own ghosts. His granddaughter had vanished 3 years ago, one of the first victims of Calloway's operation. We need to think, Jack said. We're not strong enough to charge in. He's got men, guns, power, and if he finds out you know about the evidence, he'll never let you live. Sarah's expression shifted. Then maybe we don't run. Maybe we use me to get close. The suggestion hit Jack like a hammer. No, it's the only way, Santos muttered reluctantly. Calloway won't stop hunting her. But if he thinks he's already caught her, Jack shook his head. That's suicide. You're talking about sending a traumatized girl into the arms of a predator. She's right, Santos said. Calloway needs to believe she's still broken, that she doesn't know anything. Sky can pretend, Sarah said, her voice barely a whisper. Done it before. The idea of using her as bait sickened Jack, but the reality was clear. If Calloway found her without knowing what she knew, that she might survive, he realized the truth, she'd be dead within minutes. And then Sarah added something else. My cousin Emma is still at the ranch. She knows where the evidence is too. Daddy told both of us. Just in case. Jack's heart sank. You're sure? Sarah nodded. Emma doesn't know I escaped. She thinks she's the only one left who remembers. Santos's face darkened. Calloway learns that he'll tear her apart, trying to get the information. Jack stood. Then we're going 20 miles north. One chance, and no backup. 2 days later, the ranch, they arrived at dusk, approaching under the guise of surrender. Santos had crafted a story, that he'd found the girl injured and had come to collect a reward. Jack, posing as a drifter turned sellout, came along to ensure payment. They were led to the ranch house, past guard posts that felt too quiet, too easy. Jack's instincts screamed. This wasn't right. They were led inside a large, elegant parlor filled with carved mahogany, silk curtains, and silver tea trays. A fireplace roared, even though the summer heat lingered outside. Deal. The whole place felt like the belly of a well-decorated beast. Then the door opened and Jack's blood turned to ice. A girl entered. She looked like Sarah, little older, more poised. Her hair was brushed, her dress clean and pressed. Eyes gleamed, not with fear but amusement. Emma, Sarah said. The girl smiled. Hello, cousin? Sarah took a step forward, stumbling slightly on her injured ankle. What have they done to you? Emma tilted her head. Done to me? Then she laughed a cold, sharp sound like broken glass. They've given me everything. Comfort, power, a future. All I had to do was tell them where you'd go and who you'd trust. Jack's heart sank on. Emma hadn't been captured. She had joined them. The truth behind the smile, you were the only one who knew where the evidence was, Emma said, her tone sweet and cruel all at once. I couldn't let you ruin everything. Jack reached for his revolver, but it was too late. With a sudden mechanical click, hidden panels in the walls opened. At least 20 rifles appeared, all aimed at him and Santos. Guards stepped into the parlor like ghosts. They had walked into a slaughter pen. Calloway entered last, dressed immaculately as ever. His silver hair was slicked back, and his smile was sharp enough to cut glass. "I must admit," he said smoothly, "I didn't expect you to come to me, but I do appreciate it." His eyes drifted to Sarah. "The map your father created is the last piece I need. Once it's gone along with the two of you, you'll have nothing left to worry about." Jack positioned himself subtly in front of Sarah, shielding her body with his own. "She's just a child," he said. "No," Calloway replied. "She's a threat." Emma, standing to the side, glanced uneasily at Sarah. Then Jack played his only card. "She's not the only threat." He turned to Calloway and locked eyes with him. "Your precious Emma," Jack said, "has been playing both sides. She helped you trap girls, but she also gathered evidence. She was never loyal. She's been building a case just like her grandfather." It was a dangerous bluff, but Jack had seen cracks in Emma's mask. It was possible, maybe even true. Calloway's eyes narrowed. "You're lying." Jack shrugged. "Maybe, or maybe you should ask your little protege how she knew the location of the Apache caves without ever being told." Emma's face paled. "He's twisting it, Father, but the damage was done." Doubt had crept in. Calloway turned to his guards. "Take them to the stables. Secure them there until I sort this out." The guards approached. Jack and Santos didn't resist it. But as they were being marched outside, Sarah whispered to Jack, "The horses." She breathed. "We can get to them." Jack's heart pounded. The escape the guards never saw it coming as they reached the stable doors. Santos exploded into motion, driving his elbow into one guard's throat, while Jack slammed another into a wall. Sarah grabbed the reins of the closest saddled horse. Despite her injured foot, they mounted fast. Santos, bleeding from a fresh gash across his temple. Jack's side, burning from a cracked rib band, bolted into the night as torches flared behind them. Gunshots rang out. Barked. Calloway's voice boomed from the house like thunder, but they were already gone. The night wind whipped at Jack's face as the horse thundered across the open plains. Behind him, Sarah clung tightly, her arms wrapped around his middle. Santos rode just behind them, his bloodied face grim, one hand pressing a cloth to the wound on his forehead. The stables and ranch disappeared behind them in the dark. But they knew it wasn't over. Calloway would hunt them, just like he hunted every girl who ever tried to run. But now, he wasn't chasing a helpless victim. He was chasing the two people who held the key to his destruction. They didn't slow until they were miles from the compound. Sheltered in a dry creek bed, surrounded by mesquite brush, the horses were foaming and trembling, but they'd made it for now. Sarah slid off the saddle with a soft cry, her ankle too damaged to take her weight. She caught her before she fell. "I'm okay," she muttered. "I've hurt worse." She laid her down gently against a boulder and turned to Santos. "How long until they catch our trail?" "Hours," the old man replied, scanning the stars. "Maybe less. Tired, but they will find us." Jack sat beside Sarah, his mind racing. "We can't outrun them forever." "No," Sarah agreed. "But maybe we don't have to." She reached into the lining of her torn dress and pulled something out, a folded piece of cloth, filthy from sweat and blood. Inside was a worn, yellowed page, hand-drawn, marked with symbols. "The map," she whispered. "It wasn't just a trail to gold. There were other marks, crosses, graves, places where girls had been buried after they were used up and discarded. Her father had tried to document every dark secret he uncovered before Calloway's men silenced him." Jack felt a cold wave of rage wash over him. "How many?" he asked. Sarah didn't answer. She didn't have to. Santos crouched beside them. "There is something else. Something I didn't tell you." Jack turned. before your daughter Emily died. Kay, did she ever speak of a man named Calloway? Jack's breath caught in his throat. No. Why? 'Cause she wasn't the only girl who got sick around that time. Several others, young, healthy girls, died of unexplained illnesses. Their families were promised land, debts forgiven. It was quiet, covered up. Okay, but I think you think Calloway was testing something. Jack finished. Using them. Santos nodded. There is more to his cruelty than lust or greed. Jack felt the ground beneath him shift. This wasn't just about gold. It wasn't even just about trafficking. Calloway was burying more than girls. He was burying secrets. The choice era stirred beside him, her face pale in the moonlight. We can't stop him alone, she said. No, Jack agreed. Tia, but if we can get this map to the right people, people who aren't in his pocket. Federal marshals, Santos added. Outside the territory, maybe even across the border. Sarah's gaze grew distant. Emma, she whispered. What about her? Jack asked. She's not what you think. She's not a monster. Jack frowned. She betrayed you, betrayed everything your father stood for. She's scared, Sarah replied. Calloway raised her after her mother died. She never had a chance to be anything else. But she's smart. She'll survive. Survival isn't redemption, Jack said. I know, Sarah said. But she still knows where the rest of the evidence is. Santos looked at both of them. There's something else. Of course there was. If Calloway realizes there are two girls with the knowledge, he'll destroy the other one to silence her, if he even suspects. He'll torture her, Sarah finished softly. They all went silent. Finally, Jack stood. We go back. Santos looked stunned. You're crazy. Maybe, Jack said. God, but I can't let her die. Not if. She's got the rest of what we need. Sarah pulled herself upright despite the pain. You won't do it alone. Jack turned sharply. Absolutely not. But she was already reaching into her boot. She pulled out the small derringer again, hand steady this time. My daddy gave me this for a reason, she said. He knew it would come to this. Jack opened his mouth to argue, but there was nothing left to say. This wasn't the same girl who clung to his saddle in tears. This was someone who had lost everything and was willing to fight to make sure no one else had to. Santos nodded grimly. If we're doing this, we need a plan. The final ride they left just before dawn, riding slow to conserve strength, cutting through dry riverbeds and abandoned ranch trails. The air was thick with heat, dust, and something heavier like fate closing in around them as they approached Calloway's estate again from the western slope. Sarah suddenly gasped. There's something I haven't told you. Jack looked over, startled. If Calloway finds out Emma and I both know everything, he won't just kill her, he'll disappear her. There's a house south of the border, a compound. Once a girl's taken there, she's gone. Do you know that? Santos asked. Sarah hesitated. Because I was supposed to go there next, before I ran. Jack felt a lead weight settle in his chest. How long do we have? Not long? They reached the crest, overlooking the ranch compound. From here, it looked almost a peaceful field to horses. A distant windmill creaking slowly, but the devil lived there and inside. A girl who had betrayed her cousin might now be their last hope. Jack turned to Sarah. You still want to do this? She nodded once. Jack didn't say another word. He just handed her his extra revolver. The gates of Calloway's ranch opened to easily. That should have been the first warning. There were fewer guards than expected. The usual patrols were missing, their absence unsettling. Jack's instincts buzzed like a rattlesnake in his gut, but he played his part riding in slow, hat low. Face unreadable dot. Sarah sat in front of him, her dress washed and repaired, her hair braided loosely, her revolver hidden beneath a fold of fabric. Santos rode beside them, a silent shadow. The guards who met them smiled with the oily calm of men who thought they'd already won. "Mr. Calloway's been expecting you," one said, stepping aside. They were led straight through the compound, past the barracks that should have been filled with men, but instead echoed hollow and empty, past the training yards, past the cages, into the house, through wide double doors that shut behind them with the finality of a tomb. The parlor revisited inside, the grand parlor. Calloway stood waiting like a king receiving an audience. Beside him, sipping from a glass of red wine, was Emma Dodd. She looked regal, untouched by the dirt and blood of their journey. Her face wore a mask of warmth, but Jack saw it beneath the polish. Her eyes were nervous, watching, waiting. "Well, well," Calloway drawled, setting his glass aside. "I must admit, I didn't expect you to return so soon, but I admire your tenacity, Mr. Morrison. Or should I say, foolishness." "You wanted the girl?" Jack replied coldly. "Here she is." Sarah stepped forward, her limp exaggerated, her eyes downcast. "I'm sorry," she murmured. "I shouldn't have run." Calloway approached her, fingers reaching out to brush her face, an act that made Jack's hand twitch toward his holster. But Sarah didn't flinch. "Good girl," Calloway said softly. "You see, even the wildest ones can be tamed. Okay?" Then Sarah looked up and spoke with fire. "But some still remember." And she pulled the tiny derringer from her sleeve and fired. Chaos the bullet hit Calloway in the shoulder. He staggered back, howling in pain. Jack and Santos exploded into motion. Jack tackled the nearest guard. Santos drew his rifle and fired point blank into another. Emma screamed, not in fear, but in rage, and plunged for Sarah. The two girls crashed to the floor. Sarah's injured leg buckled under her, and she cried out in pain. Emma's hands closed around her throat. "You ruined everything," she snarled. But Sarah wasn't the same helpless girl she once was. With her free hand, she grabbed a shard of glass from the broken wine glass on the floor and drove it into Emma's arm. Emma recoiled, shrieking, blood pouring down her sleeve. Santos dragged Sarah up by her good arm. Jack spun and fired twice. More guards were pouring in now, but the confusion worked to their advantage. "Back door," Jack shouted. They barreled through a side hallway, past velvet drapes and oil paintings of forgotten barons. Down the servants' corridor and into the cool morning light. Behind them, alarms rang. Torches flared. Dogs barked. But Santos had done more than fight. He had sabotaged the ranch's alarm system, and several gates were jammed open. They had minutes, maybe less. They reached the stable, where 3 horses waited. Santos had prepared them in advance, knowing there might be only one shot at this. As they mounted, Sarah gasped, clutching her side. Her face was pale, her breathing sharp and fast. "I'm okay," she muttered, but Jack saw the blood on her dress. "You're not okay," he growled. "I'll ride," she snapped. "We finish this." They did. Aftermath. 3 days later, federal marshals from across the border raided Calloway's remaining holdings. They had proof: Sarah's map, documents hidden in the ranch's cellar that Jack recovered during the fight, and testimonies from dozens of rescued girls. Santos had smuggled out a ledger of transactions Calloway thought long buried. The bodies were found too. 18 shallow graves behind the ranch. 5 more near the copper mine. The story spread like wildfire. Calloway's name became a curse. Judges who once protected him resigned in disgrace. His empire crumbled in the sunlight. He never made it to trial. He died in custody. Rumors swirled that someone silenced him to keep other secrets buried. Jack didn't care. The man was gone. That was enough. Epilogue. A different kind of future. Sarah recovered slowly. Caught. Her ankle would never fully heal. The wounds on her heart might take longer, but she lived. She went on to testify in 3 territories, helped dismantle another trafficking ring in Arizona, worked with other survivors. She would never be the child she had once been, but she became something stronger. Santos, after years of silence, became a voice for the voiceless. He adopted 2 girls from the rescued group and rebuilt an old mining house into a safe haven for displaced children. And Jack Morrison, the man who once believed he had nothing left, found a reason to live again. He stayed in touch with Sarah, watched her grow into the force her father had dreamed of. And for the first time in years, he stopped writing just to forget. One morning, years later, Sarah visited him at the edge of the desert. She brought with her a battered book filled with names, victims, survivors, allies. At the end of the list was her father's. She handed it to Jack. "You were the reason this didn't end with me," she said softly. Jack took the book, held it against his chest, and finally, after so many years, allowed himself to grieve not in pain, but in peace.